Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage. We're back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday. And today really we're talking about thyroid hormone and your mitochondria. And I drew a little picture. Hopefully this helps you understand physiology a little bit more when it comes to how thyroid hormone works. So your mitochondria are like the engines inside your cell. And you got a bunch of them inside your cells. And it is the mitochondria that uses a lot of that food-based energy, converts it into cellular energy, and drives the physiology of the cell. So we typically think about thyroid hormone as driving the metabolism of the cell, but it's really all checked and balanced by what's going on with the mitochondria. So the mitochondria, think about those like the engines inside your cell. And on the engine, there's a computer system, an engine computer system. They call it an ECU, I guess. And this ECU determines how much fuel is coming into the engine and how the engine's running. If the engine's running fantastic, then more fuel is driven into the engine so you get more output, okay? However, when the engine senses challenges or problems, or that problem within the engine is picked up by the ECU, that computer that's kind of monitoring the engine, maybe there's a bad fuel filter, maybe there's bad spark going on, maybe there's a clogged fuel line, maybe there's something going on within that engine. What happens is that ECU decreases the amount of fuel coming into the engine so that you can't blow that engine up. And this is kind of what happens inside your cells and tissues. When a cell is in homeostasis, low stress mode, the goal of that cell is to increase growth, repair, increase hormone production, increase protein and peptide production, and burn lots of energy and fuel to run all of these really important things that help you feel and function well. However, when there's a stress on the cell, and not just any stress, but more excessive stress, the cell needs to adapt to that stress. If it's mild or moderate stress, like with physical training or exercise, there's a short-term downregulation of the metabolism to allow for healing, regeneration, repair, mitophagy, all these things. And then the system comes right back online. But when there's excessive stress on the cell and on the mitochondria senses its excessive stress, and it shifts the cell into defense mode or protection mode. And what happens is the whole system slows down. We have fewer mitochondria. They actually kind of start to bind together, or what we call fuse together. And then we down-regulate the mitochondria. We don't run them at as high a fuel rate. Why do we not do that? Because if there's a threat in the cell, like an infection, an organism, then the cell's going to increase free radicals to help deal with that threat. And if you have free radical production because of the cell danger response and free radical production because the mitochondria are going at full tilt, that produces an excessive level of free radicals, and you have a limitation to how much antioxidant potential is going on in the cell. So if you had tons and tons of free radicals and limited amount of antioxidants, what happens is you get excessive oxidative stress on the cell, and you can not only damage the cell, but destroy the cell. So the cell goes into protection mode. The engine goes into low power mode, and part of what we do for that is there's a reduced conversion of T4 to T3, and T3 and both T4 and T3 both get deactivated in the cell. This reduces the total T3 circulation in the cell, allows for less fuel to go to the mitochondria, and the mitochondria can go into low power mode. This is meant to be temporary, but when you have chronic cell stress because of poor sleep, emotional stress from work, your relationships, your kids, your spouse, because of toxins from your environment, from your food, from the alcohol, from your medications, or you have chronic infections or dysbiosis going on, these things create an overload of stress, and it causes this low power mode to occur. And what you're going to have is you're going to have daily fatigue. You're going to have exercise that wipes you out, or exercise intolerance. You're going to have brain fog. You're still going to be cold, and you're going to have weight gain. These are all things that you're going to start to develop. Now, somebody might see, oh, well, you have enough T4 in the system, but you have low T3, so let's just give you more T3. But more T3 isn't going to go in and make this mitochondria work better. Matter of fact, if you overload the system with T3, it actually contributes to the oxidative stress of the cell. It's not a T4 thing. So if you have enough T4, but you have low T3, there's enough T4 to convert to T3 if the cells and if those mitochondria want to do it in the first place, but they don't want to do it. They didn't forget how to do it. They're doing it adaptively. So this is a huge issue for anybody who has normal TSH, normal free T4, normal total T4, but has low T3, low free T3, and elevated reverse T3. You have a cell stress mechanism going on that's reducing your body's conversion of T4 to T3 and T3 to T2. That's why you're tired. That's why you're fatigued. That's why you have exercise intolerance. And this isn't going to be fixed by putting more fuel into the system, especially if there's already enough T4. The body, yes, you may get a temporary bump in symptoms with T3, but your body figures it out. It adapts. I get calls all the time from people who are on high dose T3 to try and optimize their T3 and free T3 and reduce their reverse T3. And it helps them initially. They always argue me, but it helped for a while. It just doesn't last. Do I need more? No, you don't need more. You actually need to address the real issue, okay? So this is the problem. Now, what might you see on your labs that might indicate that you have excessive cell stress response on, cellular hypothyroidism, tissue hypothyroidism going on? You might see an increase in LDH, lactose dehydrogenase. That means your mitochondria or your cells have shifted into anaerobic energy production. You may see glucose resistance or insulin resistance, even on a low carbohydrate diet. You may see a low free T3 to free T4 ratio. Now, I caution you, if you're taking T3 medication and you take that T3 medication a couple hours before you get your blood drawn, of course your T3 is probably going to look better. Of course that free T3 to free T4 ratio is going to look better because you're giving T3. This is no longer measuring what your body's converting, it's measuring what you're taking. And you might see increased levels of lipids in circulation. There are other things you may see, but I don't want to get too complicated on this Thyroid Thursday. So if you're a person who's struggling with chronic hypothyroid symptoms, you don't feel well on T4 only, you switched to NP thyroid, you felt a bit better, but then you had to ratchet up the dose and then you didn't feel good there, and now you've added Cytomel or you're taking T3 only by itself, and you still don't feel well. Stop wasting time on trying to optimize your labs. You're not in homeostasis. You need to make sure there's enough T4 in the system. Possibly, if you don't have a thyroid gland or you're fully replacing the amount of T4 that a thyroid gland would make and you're suppressing TSH under 1, maybe 5 to 10 micrograms. But if you're still not converting well, don't waste time on trying to optimize the T3. It'll only help you temporarily at best, and it's likely to contribute to more signs and symptoms. If you're struggling, you need help, you want a different opinion as to what's going on, or a whole different approach, DM me Discovery, and my team will send you a link so you can schedule a complimentary discovery call, and we can talk about what I might be able to do to help you. Take care.